Hello everyone, Fanta here, you're watching FANTAVISION, and this is Biggest Gaming Regrets. Now, I've already asked quite a few of you on Twitter, what's your biggest gaming regret? And I've gotten some great replies, and it really made me look back at my life as a person who's played video games their entire life. I don't recall a time where I haven't played video games. There are baby photos of me watching my brothers play Atari. So I've sort of been a gamer my entire life. But over that massive amount of time, because I'm old now, there have been things that I've done that I definitely regret when it comes to video games. And a lot of them have to do with selling them. I know that's kind of a strange thing to regret, but I'm not the only one on Twitter. A lot of people really regret selling their old systems, and that's why after I sold this specific system, I basically just stopped selling systems ever again because I knew that I might regret it someday. So I feel like starting off with this one really makes sense because it's something that I did once and then never really did again because I learned from the experience. It's not the worst thing ever that has happened to me. It's not like it completely ruined my joy of games or anything like that. It's just something that I kind of regret doing because I wish I still had a lot of those games in my collection, and that's selling my entire DS collection back in 2007. That's right, 16 years ago is what we're talking about here. So I was just a wee lad, and I really wanted a PSP because it had God of War, it had Grand Theft Auto, it had all of these more mature games that, I'm not a baby anymore. I'm 13, okay? I'm not a child. I want to be playing some adult games. And that was my mindset at the time. I wanted to get a PSP. I wanted to play all those games, and I was tired of my DS. I saw it as a kiddie system, and I just wanted to move on. And I had the Pokemon games for the DS. I had Castlevania Portrait of Ruin. I had Metroid Prime Hunters. I had all of these amazing games for the DS, and I sold all of them. Now, later on, a couple years later, of course, like I said, I regretted this big time. However, I want to revisit this past memory because I actually found the email correspondence I had with the person I sold it to 16 years ago. And it's quite an interesting story that I want to tell you all today. So grab a drink, hang out, and let's reminisce on some of those regrets that we have over our gaming pastime. Now, right away, here's the picture of my original DS. Yes, this was my first Nintendo DS I ever owned. Not my first handheld. It did have the Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Advance SP, but this was my original DS. I wish I still had it because I have the original of everything else pretty much still in my collection. And it's funny, I want to give some backstory on another reason why I was getting rid of this Nintendo DS. It's not just because I wanted a PSP, but it's because my buddy had just gotten a DS Lite, and the screen was so much brighter, it was so much more vibrant. But even back in the day, Child Fanta was like, I don't want to spend a bunch of money on something that just has a brighter screen. Now, it would have made my DS experience a lot better, but even back in the day, I thought just a screen brightness upgrade is kind of stupid, and I didn't want to spend the money on it. I've been this way my entire life, I know. So instead of spending money on a newer DS Lite, I wanted to explore a different handheld with a different library, so I was saving money for PSP. The first email reads, here are some pictures of the DS. They aren't great, but they are okay. Please email me on how much you think they will buy it for. I will email you the pictures of the games I want to sell when you tell me how much they will buy it for. So this was the initial email to this person who was interested in buying the DS. And I just want to know how much they're going to offer for the system itself. I'm going to first show the system because I don't want to show the full lot at first, and then see how much they'll give me for it. Hi Fanta, our buyer says we can get a comparable console for around $50 on eBay, but we don't mind paying a bit extra when we're dealing with friends. Honestly, right away, I know this is a gaming regret, but it genuinely seemed like this person actually cared about getting me a decent deal. In fact, as you'll see, how about $80 for the DS, case, charger, and one game? If that sounds reasonable, why don't you tell me what games you've got to sell and give me a single amount you want for all of them? Now, just to put this in perspective, an original DS on eBay right now sold for around $47. Now, you could argue, back then it was worth a lot more, it was newer, it was 2007. I don't feel too bad about that in the modern day about that deal, because even the original DS at that time, because the DS Lite had come out, people weren't really about the original DS. They wanted the newer system because it looked a lot better. Keep in mind that the best deal for both of us will be an estimate that is higher than GameStop/EB Games would pay you for your used games, and lower than GameStop EB Games would charge me for the used copies of the games. In other words, if GameStop were to pay you $5 for a game, then turn around and sell it to me for $10, then you and I both win if you sell it to me somewhere in the neighborhood of $7.50. You get an extra $2.50, I save $2.50. Does that make sense? Yeah. That makes sense. Honestly, this guy, once again, wasn't looking to rip me off. He was looking to pay above GameStop, which, that's not bad. We've got contacts at GameStop if you'd like us to find out their prices for your used games, or you can call them yourself and ask them how much they'd give you for each one. Again, this guy is not trying to treat me like a child. I was only 13 or 14 at the time, and yet he's actually treating me with respect, and I really respect this guy for doing that, because he could have totally just swindled me. Well, maybe not me, but he could have swindled another child at this day and age, and he could have just said, this is what our GameStop contacts told us this was worth, and didn't get, add that extra part of you can call yourself if you want to double check that. Seriously, this guy, again, this is a gaming regret, but I gotta hand it to this guy. I appreciate what he did for me back then. Our collectors looked through your games and did some research. They suggest $101.25 for all your listed games minus one, Castlevania the cheapest one, which you agreed you'd throw in with the sale of the DS for $80. In case you like math, here's how we arrive at your offer. We multiply BRE's cash buyback amount by 25% and then add this additional cash into your BRE buyback amount. This allows us to say we will pay you 25% more than GameStop for your used games. In case you don't know what BRE is, it's a company that provides buyback info to game stores. Search for them on the web and you can find out roughly what GameStop will offer you for your used games when you bring them in. Which is interesting if you think about it. So that means back in the day, there was another website you had to go to find out how much GameStop would give you for your trade-ins? That's wild. So that means back in the day, GameStop wouldn't tell you online what they were going to offer you until you came into the store where you're already there, where you're more likely going to trade in those games because you're already at the store. So GameStop has always been sketchy, huh? Now, I do want to say, though, the 25% is a little bit less than what he said in that previous email where he said, let's meet halfway in between what GameStop's going to charge us used and what they would actually give you. It sounded like in that original email he was going to give me in between that area. Maybe it works out to about 25%, but it really depends on the game. I understand why he was trying to simplify the process. Anyway, let's continue and look at why this is truly a regret, especially because of because of the prices back then. For example, if GameStop will give you $7.10 for Super Mario 64, we will give you 25% of that extra, which is about $1.78. So while GameStop will pay you $7.10, we'll give you $8.88. This may not seem like much in terms of one game, but for a group of games like you've got, it adds up. So let's go ahead and check how much Super Mario 64 sells for the DS on eBay right now. So nowadays, Super Mario 64 on the DS is worth about 15 loose, 25 complete. So I didn't get completely fleeced back then. I'm sure it was a lot cheaper back then used because it wasn't a retro DS game that people wanted to relive. It was just a current gen game, so it wasn't as special. However, do you remember that part of the email I just read about the Castlevania game that wasn't worth that much? Well, that was Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, and that's going for $60 on eBay now. So that sucks. Wish I still had that game. Sorry if this is too much information. We like to be upfront with people we work with, so the bottom line is that LGI, Learning Games Initiative, will buy your DS, charger, case, and the 10 games you've listed in your pictures for $181.25. How does that sound? Again, for back then, that's not terrible. I got a pretty damn good deal back then. And after I did this deal, I got enough money for my PSP. but still, I wish I hadn't done it because I had so many great games. Those 10 games I listed, it was Pokemon, WarioWare Touched, Metroid Hunters, Castlevania Portrait of Ruin, Castlevania Dawn of Sorrow, which is now a $70, $80 game on eBay. Good lord. I wish I still had those games, especially as a game collector, because I've always taken great care of my games, so they'd still be in mint condition. I'd still have them, and I'd have all those memories associated with them, which is why I'm sure a lot of these game regrets are going to be, I wish I hadn't traded in X game, which I definitely have a couple of those. So let's go ahead and read the final email I sent before I did the deal. It's only $11 under what I'd hoped to be getting, so I think that's great. Can you just add 50 cents to it to make it even? LOL, then it's a deal. Are you going to be at the church all day? Because I can't make the deal right after I go to church because my mom has an open house to go to, but maybe later today. So yeah, if you could make the grand total $190, that would be great. But you don't have to. I'm happy we could make this deal. Thank you so much. Maybe today I will be able to, but I'm not sure. So, talking like a child again. Yeah, I wanted them to round it up a little bit to 190 because that's just who I am. Got to make it that round number. Might as well round it up a bit. Or if I was going garage sale game hunting, oh, let's round that down a little bit so it's an even number. Hilarious. Now, something you might not have noticed as I was reading this, or maybe you did and you're kind of wondering what it is. What is the Learning Games Initiative? The Learning Games Initiative is an international, transdisciplinary, and multi-institutional research collective founded in 1999 that studies, teaches with, and builds computer games in educational contexts. The website, built on Omeka CMS framework, coordinates LGI's massively distributed archive. At present, the archive contains more than 250,000 items, including 15,000 games, 200 plus game systems, hundreds of scholarly, trade, and fan publications, thousands of other artifacts representing the game industry's wide and deep incursion into global popular culture, from feature-length films and soundtracks to articles of clothing and comestibles? I don't know what that is. To private and corporate documents concerning various aspects of game design and development. So, I regret selling my DS, but what I don't regret is that it has become part of a much larger collection. It didn't just go to GameStop. It didn't just go to a reseller. It went to a massive archive where I can probably visit the games that I sold 16 years ago today. So if you guys really want me to do that, comment down below if you guys want me to go visit my old games, because it's actually at a local university of mine, and I'll film it. I'll do like a extra video or something. I'll throw them back to the futon, or I'll include it in some future episode of this series. And it's just a fun time thinking about and going back and talking about all these different gaming memories and regrets that I have of the past. And you know, I'm not super sad about any of these gaming regrets. I mean, here's a DS Lite, here's a 3DS XL, here's a new 3DS XL, here's your 2DS XL. I mean, it's not like I don't have a DS anymore. I have like 6 of these now from garage sale game hunting. I've gotten most of these games back through just thrift stores and game hunting. And honestly, the fact that these games went to an archive and for what seems to be a good cause makes this probably the least regretful thing that I've done and that I'll talk about in the series. But it is the thing that I did want to talk about because it was the first time I had ever traded in an entire system in all of my games to start over with a new system and explore a new library, which was a fun adventure. It was a great time playing the PSP. I don't regret buying that PSP. I still have that PSP. I still have all of the games I bought for that PSP. But I do miss a lot of those games, and I don't think I ever found those Castlevania games ever out in the wild again, so I guess I'll just have to keep hunting. But let me know what your biggest gaming regrets are. If you like the series, please do leave a like and subscribe, because I'd love to do more of these. And I've got a couple other more series in mind, so stick around, stay tuned, and as always, have a fantastic day. See you, everybody.